Hey guys, all right, making fluffy dinner buns is not as difficult as you might think, and there is nothing that will impress your guests more than pulling fresh bread out of the oven. Today I'm going to show you how to channel your inner baker and make your own dinner buns. All right, so here's what you're gonna need. Some flour, you can use white, whole wheat, or a combination, some salt, some sugar, some honey, yeast, butter, vegan butter if you want, and some water. Don't worry if you didn't catch all that, the recipe's on the blog. So we're gonna start with some boiling water. I have a cup and a half here of boiling water, a couple tablespoons of our butter in here. And the goal is just to mix this and melt the butter and the honey together. And I almost forgot to add the salt. So the salt goes into this mixture. Give it a little stir. Okay, so the next step is activating our yeast. And now yeast feeds on sugar. So we're gonna add a little bit of sugar to some lukewarm water. When we say lukewarm, it's really about 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It's really kind of room temperature. We're gonna stir that sugar in. It's the food for the yeast. And then we're gonna sprinkle our yeast right on top. Fabulous. Okay, so this is gonna take about 10 minutes for the yeast to activate, which is just enough time for me to go have a cup of tea. So now our yeast is activated. This is what it looks like. It is a little bit bubbly, a little bit foamy, and absolutely perfect for our bread. And now what we're gonna do is just mix it all together. So I'm gonna use about half whole wheat flour, half white flour. I'm gonna start with my whole wheat first. So I'm gonna add 3 cups of whole wheat flour to my big dish here. All right, now I'm gonna add that butter and honey and water and salt mixture. This one still may not be super, super cool, but that's okay because our flour is going to bring down the temperature. There we go. So you're just gonna keep on gradually adding in flour, stirring as you go. You're gonna stop stirring once it gets too difficult to stir, and at that point you can dump it out onto your clean surface and start the kneading process, which I'll show you. Now you don't wanna add too much flour to your dough, otherwise it will get tough, and nobody wants tough dough. All right, so this is too difficult now to stir with a spoon, so I'm gonna dump it out onto my clean counter with a little extra flour to knead. All right, now is the time to have some fun. We've dumped our dough out onto our counter, and now we get to knead it. So this is where it gets a little bit messy, typically where I invite the kids in, and there's a big, big mess involved, of course, but so much fun. Kneading dough is honestly like therapy. Now, the reason you need dough is to develop the gluten in the flour. That is going to give you that beautiful, soft texture for your bread. So all you need to do is keep on pushing it down with the heels of your hand, and you just keep on doing that in a circular type of a motion. There we go. See, ladies, you get your workout as well. So you're just gonna add enough flour so that it doesn't stick to your hands. As soon as it starts sticking to your hands, you sprinkle a little bit more on, keep kneading. Now you're gonna have to knead for about 10 to 12 minutes, which might seem like an eternity when you're kneading, but it's what you need to do, pardon the pun, to get a good dough. Okay, so I feel like this is pretty much done, and you know it's done and ready to go when you do this with the dough. You just want to pull it, and you can see that there's elastic type of strands. That means the dough is holding together really well. So I'm happy with this. All right, so our bread is ready to proof. What we're gonna do is to put it in this bowl that I've just washed. It was the bowl that I used before. I just greased it lightly with a little bit of oil. You can use whatever you want for oil. And now I'm gonna put the little ball of bread into the bowl, and we're going to cover it up, and we're going to let it proof or rise until it's doubled. This usually takes about an hour. All right, let's take a peek. It has definitely risen. It has definitely doubled. So you don't want to overproof your dough. You'll know it if it's like flowing over or like more than doubled. You don't want to do that, but now this is perfect. So we're going to just punch it down, and then we're going to make our buns. Okay, so the dough is punched down and we are ready to make our buns or bread. I'm going to show you how to do both. There's a little bit of a hack to getting a really nice bun and a really nice loaf of bread. So let's start with the buns. I'm going to just use a sharp knife, and I'm just going to take a little handful of dough. You're going to want to keep your dough handfuls around the same, and it's about a half of a cup here. And I'm just going to really gently fold the dough over and pinch it at the bottom, and continue doing that. You can use a little bit of flour on your hands. It makes it a little bit easier. And I'm gonna continue to pinch it over. And what I'm doing here sounds really funny, but I'm taking the ball of dough, the flat, rounded side up, and I'm just turning it around in my hand, and I'm using my thumb to pinch the dough ball together at the bottom to form a really nice, perfect bun. Okay, so our buns are made, and now we're gonna move on to the loaf. What you're gonna wanna do is take your loaf pan and grab a ball of dough that is about half the size of your loaf pan, because remember, it's gonna rise. So here's the trick. So I'm gonna take my loaf or my ball of dough, and I have a rolling pin, and we're gonna roll this out into a rectangle. Now the width of the rectangle should be about the same width as your loaf pan. Trick number one. And again, you're gonna use some muscle. This bread making is not for sissies, let me tell you. So we have a nice little rectangle here. It does not need to be perfect. Remember, this bread is gonna rise and fill the pan anyway, but I'm gonna take this from the short end and I'm gonna roll it up. And then you're gonna put it seam side down, so that folded end down in your pan. You're gonna tuck the little ends in, and there you have a little loaf ready to rise. All right, our bread has risen, our buns are ready to go in, as is our loaf. We're gonna bake these at 375 for about 20 minutes for the buns and about 30 minutes for the loaf. They'll look nice and golden brown and will smell delicious. All right, these smell amazing, and all we need to do now is to dump them out while they're still hot. There we go. Perfect, fluffy buns and homemade bread. Thank you guys so much for watching. For more inspiration like this, head on over to freshnutrition.com.